fired! You're fired! You're fired! All right! You're fired! You're fired! You're fired! Donald Trump, you're fired! You're fired!
No, you can't do that to John Cena.
It's to the point. I didn't even think he was saying fired at the end there.
Not my John Cena. That's a step too far.
Welcome to an emergency edition of the Bulluminati podcast. I'm your host, Bull Feinbond. Joined alongside me, as always, Robert Steeg, Seth Varnadore, and our beautiful podcast producer, Anthony Vito, is joining us tonight. Some late breaking news here, I guess, over the last, 3 hours or so? USF Vice President of Athletics, Michael Kelly, has fired football coach Jeff Scott and defensive coordinator Bob Shoop. The final nail in the coffin was the 54-28 drubbing yesterday at Temple. Seth, we talked about it in the pregame show. I wrote the story before the game started. Listen, you can't get shellacked like this at Temple and think you're going to keep your job. And I think that 7-minute postgame press conference from Jeff Scott yesterday, I think he knew. Yeah,
it would certainly seem, and we talked about it in Twitter Spaces yesterday. Like, first of all, you didn't think that a blowout was in the cards, and if it was, were to happen, a loss yesterday was kind of. I thought the whispers behind the scenes from the fan base gets loud, and then it was more than a loss; it was a blowout. So I think that really kind of accelerated things. I would imagine, because it was. I mean, it was about as bad as you could get. So,
yeah, it was.
You really had no other recourse at that point. I think if you didn't want to have a very interesting crowd this weekend.
Yeah, how do you, as Michael Kelly, how do you face the fans? It's one home game in the last 2 months or something like that, just due to circumstances. How do you face the fans in that parking lot? Because he goes out and shakes hand, kisses babies. How do you handle that when you have a coach who just allowed Temple, who had literally one of the worst offenses in the country, put up 100 on you, and they did it pretty easily.
Yeah, I don't, like in this, there's a few different things, right? Like in terms of optics, and I think I'm sure we'll touch on it, and we've actually touched on it indirectly in the past a little bit. Is all right, you're going to open a brand new facility. Is this what you want to be on the photo op? A guy that you might be firing in a couple of weeks, right? There's that, and then there's we talked about it yesterday, the apathy that might start creeping in the fan base. Hard raises money when people don't care. So, anger, especially once you do something about it, take out the root of their anger, you can drive that towards donations and things like that. Apathy, you can't really drive that towards anything, and you just might lose those people. So I think on a personal human level, it's an unfortunate thing, but on a purely results-based coaching level, it seemed inevitable after Saturday. So
yep, what must be done eventually must be done immediately. And that was the recourse. I had multiple people texting me throughout the day today, kind of figuring out, man, when is this going to happen? When's this going to happen? Michael Kelly fired Charlie Strong 2 days after his final game. So it was the Black Friday 2019 game. He got fired that Sunday. Pretty quick turnaround. I think you pretty smart by USF to wait until halftime of the Bucks game, or just about halftime of the Bucks game, to slyly leak this out and report it. It's going to be an uphill climb for Michael Kelly. It's the second football coach he's fired. It's going to be a second hire. Typically, you don't get a third hire if you screw it up again, and that's going to be the onus and the crux. And I think he's going to really take his time. you buy yourself 3 or 4 weeks prior to everybody else kind of pulling the trigger on some of those coaching firings at the end of the year, but you're still competing with Nebraska and Georgia Tech and all the other places that have openings, and even the openings we don't even know about with coaching movement. It's always a silly season in December, and it could bleed into January. Steeg, gut reaction, gut thoughts to the news from yesterday, like the game yesterday leading into the final decision to axe Jeff Scott.
Yeah, in the plainest terms, it sucks. Like I don't think anyone can kind of ignore what at the end of the day, whatever your feelings towards football coaches and the amount of money they make and everything like that, it sucks because when you come down to it, when we first hired Jeff Scott, it's a home run hire on paper. And then we got to know Jeff Scott more and more, not just as the football coach, but as the person. And like, he's a really good dude. And like, the thing is, like, yeah, we can say, being a good dude doesn't pay the bills, doesn't get you wins and everything like that. But, at the end of the day, he's a competitive football coach, and he came here with the goal of getting USF, rebuilding the foundation, rebuilding the culture, and winning football games, and also getting this university in alignment and being that cornerstone piece. And I mean, God, we could pull up a checkbox of everything that we wanted in a head coach for this new head coach. And it's basically the exact same thing. You add another box at the bottom with pencil that says, was a winning head coach at some point. But really, like, that's the big difference between what we had with Jeff Scott and what we need a guy that can win football games. So it's a gut punch, really. I mean, truthfully, it's not as much of a gut punch as like the Big 12 news, last year or anything like that. It's it just kind of sucks because at the end of the day, you can talk about the money, you can talk about anything like that. He failed. And failing sucks one way or another. You can cry into the dollar bills all you want, but he'll end up being fine. He'll end up going to like Clemson or something like that because they need an offensive coordinator, clearly. And at the end of the day, he's going to be fine, and we're all going to be fine and dandy. But 3 years down the drain, we had all of this positive momentum going into the season. It died at 14-52 in the first quarter at the BYU game. But yeah, that's kind of the thing. It sucks. There's no two ways to put it. It sucks.
For people wondering what's on Nate's head.
Oh yeah, Nate, please.
We had a plan before the hurricane to, instead of doing a film room, doing a Paul Feinbaum-esque call-in show with Bull Feinbond here. And so that's a Paul Feinbaum-esque haircut with the classic horseshoe pattern, as George Costanza would say. And this was something we planned to do, I think, after the Louisville week.
I think it was.
Because we were kind of at the point of, okay, it's not going too well here. So
then a hurricane hit, and that changed some things.
So we had to scrap it, but hey, you still got to pull it out here. So
yeah, you know what? I forgot to return it, so I think it's outside of the Amazon return window. So and now it's just mine in perpetuity. So figured I'd break it out this evening. Jeff Scott finishes his USF coaching tenure 4-26, 1-26 against FBS opponents, blown out numerous times. I would venture to say more than 12 times, less than 25, but definitely somewhere in there. It never got better. He whiffed on 2 defensive coordinator hires, and I'll say it, Charlie Weiss Jr. was kind of sucked eggs as the offensive coordinator for the Bulls his first couple of seasons. Travis Trickett, home run hire. Seems that the offense looks competent. Turnover problems yesterday notwithstanding, a couple of turnovers from Trey Marsh, Seth's unfortunate Kelly Joyner just getting the ball taken from him.
We should have known,
But yeah, where do you come back? Where do you come back from this? Daniel DePrado will be the interim head coach for the last 3 weeks of the season. If you guys will recall, DePrado and Ernie Sims were the co-defensive coordinators for the Central Florida game last year, where we saw them probably have their best defensive output of
last
that
2
season.
seasons.
Right. Ernie Sims will take over. He was the co-defensive coordinator because they gave him an expanded title and role without the play calling duties after some teams, namely Florida State, started sniffing around him to keep him here. He's now going to be calling the plays for the last 3 weeks of the season. Where do you go from here? It's a tough way to go about it. They have a SMU team this week who put up 77,
56 in the first half, right?
Yeah, it was 56-35, I think, at halftime of the SMU Houston game. And oh dear Lord, good luck.
10 touchdown Tanner Mordecai. How are you going to stop that?
You're not going to.
Hey, we gotta get a dead cat bounce here. I mean, there's another hurricane coming, so who knows what the fuck it's gonna happen to that game at this point. So maybe Tanner Mordecai isn't really good with a wet ball. Who knows?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly. So as we kind of, I don't want to put a bow on it, but we've got the hot board. We've got itchy trigger finger. Seth, do you want to just jump right into it and see? There's been some names bandied about. The Athletic threw some names out there. Tampa Bay Times threw whatever the hell that was out there.
Yeah, I mean, it was. You've heard these names before.
I'm legitimately shocked Rich Bisaccia's name wasn't on that Tampa Bay Times list.
Well, that's coming.
It might as well have been. It might as well have just been an invisible ink.
Out of all the times his name's been bandied out there, this is like the most equipped since he had since he was interim head coach and had some success like that. Before it was just like,
he took a team to the playoffs last year.
Yeah, that's most equipped than before. It was like he was special teams coach of the Bucks that one time.
All right, so I have a hot board. I will go. I know nothing. I know nobody. This is not any type of inkling of what could happen.
This is Seth's
these are just names I like. This is just in my mind. These are names that sprung to mind, and what I think they should do. All right, this is my hot board here, as you can see.
God, this is the prettiest fucking background. I'm going to say it again.
These are the must-haves to me. Ability to identify, develop, and recruit at a lower level. I think the biggest whiff in terms of hiring Jeff Scott was that, I thought his best trait was recruiting. And I don't think that if that's your best trait, I don't think that wins here. Maybe outside of one guy who I will list shortly, who has shown the ability to recruit at a very high level at a lower level. But for the most part, I think you have to be able to identify guys, develop them, and show the ability to recruit and win at a lower level, because you're not going to be able to go out and get 4 and 5 stars at USF. Not right now. I think you have to be able to build with a solid base, right? Number 2 for me, I think you have to be unique schematically. You can't just line up. That was kind of my biggest worry when Scott was hired. The Clemson offense, it was sound, but it wasn't spectacular, and you kind of wondered, was it? And you're starting to see this bear out a little bit. Was it a good offense because they had better players than everyone they played? Like, is it helpful to have 2 top 5 picks at quarterback?
Sorry, I want to cut you off here, Seth. As of 40 minutes ago, USF just offered some kid from JUCO. I don't know who is doing this. It's like a ghost writing whip right now.
I mean,
recruiting
never stops.
ABC, baby.
ABC, always be recruiting, especially when you just fired your head coach.
Yeah, recruiting never stops. So, and then prior head coach experience preferred. I don't think it's a must-have, because I don't think you're in a position to kind of have must-haves, really. You kind of got to go for the guy that fits these the best. But I think being unique schematically obviously helps you when teams have to prep for you. It helps you give an identity to recruit to. I do not think triple option is a way USF would like to go. That is unique schematically, but I don't think that's the way to go. So the first level here is, I'm calling it pray and pay. You kind of have to pray that a Power 5 school doesn't offer these guys, and then you're going to have to pay them all a decent bit of money, I think, to get them away from where they are now. So let's go. Jamie Chadwell. I'm not sure if I spelled his name right. Jamie Chadwell. Is it EY?
EY.
Is it? I just went for it on my phone real fast. So Chadwell, Dion, and Sean Lewis is the head coach of Kent State. I think probably all three of these guys may end up getting P5 jobs. That's why I say these are unlikely. But these are kind of, to me, this is a list of make them say no, right? Is Chadwell, how well paid is he at Coastal Carolina? I think you could probably offer him more money at USF. He's shown the ability to win and recruit at a lower level. He's recruited guys in Florida. I think their leading receiver the past few years, who's now on the Bengals practice squad, I believe, is from Venice. Their backup quarterback is from Venice. So they've recruited Florida there. Dion, that one kind of goes without too much explanation. You're going to hear that from everybody. He's the guy I mentioned that has recruited at a high level, at a lower level. His name kind of carries a lot of weight. He'll be able to recruit at a very high level wherever he goes.
Yep.
And they're actually pretty good schematically at Jackson State. It's not just that he recruits better players, which is helpful, but like his first year there, they weren't real great on offense. He fired his coordinator, hired somebody else, and they're a lot better now. They were like top 10, I think, in offense and defense in FCS. So he's got some results on the field. Sean Lewis is a guy I like at Kent State. Their offense is basically the Baylor offense, the one Tennessee's running, same kind of thing. They've been really good at it for a few years now. He's a Midwest guy, so not a lot of Florida ties, but his staff is really good. I think they do really well, but he's also a guy that might be in the running for some of these bigger P5 jobs. He played at Wisconsin, I believe, so maybe he gets a look there. I don't know, but I think he's a really good name. And at Kent State, I'd imagine you could pay him better at USF than Kent State can pay him. So guys with lower level success.
Can I add something real quick with that last tier? I know it seems kind of crazy because those guys have been bandied for P5 jobs for a very long time. Dion will be a name that gets thrown out there, but Sean Lewis especially. I think this is a very good concept. Like Seth says, you got to get them to tell you no. You can't just say, unattainable and move on. So it's like, this isn't us saying USF is going to be a step up as much as you got to shoot for the stars and see what lands. So,
and we'll pay you more. I think like you have to go in and say, we'll pay you more than how much is, I could have looked this up, but it was family movie night. We were watching Elf, so I didn't have too much time, but it's already Christmas in my house. So
great movie.
So we're on to Elf already. But I would imagine USF could pay more if they wanted to put the money into it for all these guys. They could pay more. But it's kind of, will P5s leave them alone for another cycle? Because Chadwell's been a guy that people have talked about forever moving up, and for whatever reason, he never seems to get the offer. So maybe he's just like, screw it, I'll go to USF if I'll win there, and then I could move up. Or maybe he likes the chance to make the playoff out of the AAC every year when it expands. So same thing for Sean Lewis. And then Dion, obviously, if he doesn't get a P5 offer this time around, what else does he have to do? What else does he have to prove, right? So you kind of go to that first group, I think, and make him say no. They all might say no. Probably all will say no. But to me, I'd like to go talk with those guys and make them tell me they're not interested. Lower level success, Willie Simmons in the state of Florida. He's a name that a lot of people are bringing up. I don't know schematically how unique he is, but I know he does a pretty good job identifying talent in the state of Florida. And they're out there offering 2025 kids already. They're pretty talented before other people. So I think they do a good job. He's in the state already. He's had success at FAMU. I think he seems to be a name that's kind of got some steam behind it.
Right.
In terms of maybe not USF, but maybe moving on somewhere else.
Seth, did you see Willie talk at that clinic, or had you left by then?
I think I missed him because I left after Mario, I believe.
Yeah, so I stuck around and was kind of hearing him talk to some of these coaches, and what I really enjoyed and liked from Willie is he's like, these kids are college age kids. They can't, like, they're not going to be able to remember everything that you're trying to do. So every season, He kind of gets with his coaches and, all right, I want to put this play in. All right, so which play are you going to take out?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a 1-for-1. All right, if you want to put this counter action in for a run game, what play are you going to remove going forward? So I kind of like that. It kind of broke it down, probably a little bit better than I just did, but it made a lot of sense. I like what he's been able to do there. And when you talk about maybe the institution not really supporting or propping up the program or being effective for him, I think the crap that he's kind of gone through at FAMU, especially earlier this year, where just a bunch of kids just weren't eligible because of paperwork issues. It seemed like I think he'd be an interesting choice. Downside, he is a Clemson guy. I mean, he's probably the most Clemson guy that's been bandied about.
He was teammates with Jeff Scott.
Yeah, so if you're looking for, like, a lot of people will be, you're going to go for the total opposite after you fire a guy. I don't know if that's a total opposite, but he's a guy that's in state already, and like Nate said, a lot of people seem to think very highly of him. So I'm sure he'll be getting interviews somewhere.
And fun parallel, he was the quarterback coach for BJ Daniels in high school.
There you go. There's a connection. All right, these next two are kind of interesting. Eric Morris is right now, this is not going to be crazy impressive sounding. He is the offensive coordinator at Washington State, but I believe he's an air raid guy or some form of, he's an air raid guy or a Baylor kind of offense guy, but he's at Washington State. He was at Incarnate Word, the head coach at Incarnate Word. He took them up, a lot of great success, really big offensive guy. G.J. Kinney's the same thing. He took over at Incarnate Word. If you go look at their stats, their quarterback is having an unbelievable year. And their quarterback last year transferred or went with Eric Morris to Washington State. Kim Ward, you heard a lot about him. So these are kind of, if you're looking for more of a really defined scheme guy, I believe both these guys are kind of air raid-ish adjacent. I think J.G. Kinney's kind of a mix of air raid and some other stuff as well.
Yep.
I think he might have been a Tulsa guy with Malzahn, maybe. I think he might have been like a Tulsa quarterback with Malzahn.
He was, because you know where he was at last year, Seth.
Was he at UCF?
He was at UCF, so he's familiar with all recruiting the state of Florida here a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and he's an Incarnate Word now, and they're still really, really good on offense. So. Head coaching success ties the state of Florida. Really good on offense. Same for Kerwin Bell.
I think he may become our Rich Bisaccia, if we're being honest.
He is. Yeah, he's my Rich Bisaccia. I'm gonna bring him up every time. I'm big dog. He's Rich Bisaccia. It'll go on forever. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for low level success, national championships, we all kind of know that stuff. I like Kerwin. I think the stink of 2019 is going to be tough for some people to get over, but they won 4 games in 2019 with a quarterback that I don't think will probably be playing Division I football anymore. So maybe not as bad as we thought at the time.
No. And quick note on Eric Morris, he was the OC at Texas Tech from 2015 to 2017.
Mahomes.
He had Mahomes. He had whoever the quarterback was in the bowl game in 2017. And they had a pretty good offense. They just could never really get over the hump with Cliff. But he was really good at Incarnate Word, kind of turning around that program, as you mentioned. So that's a good one to kind of keep an eye on as well.
I think all 4 of these guys and be like, this is the group that I really like here. Like, this is what I would be warm and fuzzy about.
And Nick's got a good point on Simmons. He had success at Prairie View A&M, wasn't great. Which is, that's a tough spot. Didn't they have like the longest losing streak in NCAA history at one point? Wasn't it Prairie View A&M?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so he's had success at multiple levels here. I think he's a guy that'll be ready for a bigger job. I'm just not sure if it's this one yet, but I think he may get a shot there. All right, so those are kind of lower level success guys. These are all interesting to me. They all have head coaching experience. I think they're all. I think Simmons is an offensive guy as well. I'm not positive, but all offensive guys. That's how I kind of lean personally. But coordinators and position coaches is kind of as far as I got. Bryles was a name I saw pushed around. I thought that was kind of interesting. I hadn't really thought about him. These other guys are kind of names that I thought of. Or Lebby, we know he's at UCF, then Ole Miss. Now he's at Oklahoma. Obviously, Bryles and him similar. Baylor. Alex Golesh is, I believe that's the name, is the coordinator at Tennessee right now.
Yep.
So those are all Bryles style Baylor, Tennessee style guys right there. So unique schematically. Jeff Grimes might be destined for bigger jobs, but he was the OC at BYU, is now the OC at Baylor. Also, really good job. His offensive lines are always really good, always able to run the ball. He spent time coaching in the SEC, so he knows the South pretty well. He'd be an interesting name, but again, these guys might all be destined for bigger jobs. Brian Johnson is an interesting one to me. He was the quarterback coach at Florida for Dan Mullen. 2020, he was also the play caller. When they had Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney and Kyle Trask, he was the actual play caller. And he left and has been the quarterback's coach for the Philadelphia Eagles the last 2 years.
Interesting. He's kind of turned Jalen Hurts into an actual NFL quarterback. That's been a pretty nice turnaround for Hurts and the Eagles.
And I don't know if there's any other coaches that were on the cover of one of the NCAA video games. He was on the cover of the NCAA game 2009, so maybe NCAA 2010, but after they beat Alabama. He was the quarterback at Utah when they beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl.
Okay.
And he was on the cover of the NCAA video game. He's an interesting guy. I think he's really he's a young guy. Really a young guy, really smart guy. I've heard him speak a few times. Really, really sharp, and he has the results kind of back him up. Word is he may be in line for an NFL head coaching job. So this would be one where you try to get out in front of it. Maybe you get him. Hey, we'll give you your first head coaching job. He's worked in Florida. I think he recruited down in Miami for Florida. So he'd probably be a pretty good recruiter if they put him down there. So he's an interesting name. John Rudzinski is the defensive coordinator, right? I think I've seen some people say they want a defensive guy. He's the defensive coordinator at Virginia. If you look at Virginia's defense last year, they were god-awful. And look at him this year, they are very good. So he was the coordinator previously at Air Force. So he's had success at a lower level with lower level of talent. He moved on to Virginia, took a defense that was really bad, turned them really good quickly. I think that's probably needed here. So he would be interesting in terms of that. I don't think any of these guys here have head coaching experience unless it's extremely limited. Tony White is the defensive coordinator at Syracuse. Kind of a similar thing. I believe he came from San Diego State, had really good defenses there, has had really good defenses at Syracuse. And it's not just because he recruits better players than everybody. So that's interesting. Then Alex Atkins is a name. He's the O-line coach and coordinator now at Florida State. He's a play caller. Their offense has been really good this year. He's considered Florida State's best recruiter as well.
He's really trying to turn Jordan Travis around quite a bit.
Yes, so he's done a really good job. He's like considered a rising star, but Charlotte may be after him as well. He was a position coach. I believe he's the offensive coordinator and O-line coach at Charlotte previously to leaving for Florida State. So he might be a hot commodity at this level. But there's a guy in state, young guy, has some coordinator experience, offensive line. I think with any of these guys, it's going to be really big to who do they hire on the opposite side of the ball will be important for them, but maybe some of these guys are gettable for USF, but that's where my list ends. So,
I mean, it's a good list. Seeing a couple of people, Tom Herman, absolutely not.
I don't know if you like. I don't know if a retread is Do you want a guy that's been fired a bunch? You know,
we have Herman was talked about. Someone mentioned Scott Frost. That's been thrown around a lot, but you trying to catch fire in a bottle from 5 years ago, or I think that's a tough sell.
It's a really hard sell to hire a guy that just got fired in any capacity. Because I mean, you kind of can look around, and not too long ago we hired a guy who got fired from a big program, and now this is where we're at 6 years later. So I think that there's like a long list of qualities of what we're all looking for, and we're not all going to agree, and thankfully we don't have to agree because it's not our decision. It's a wonderful thing here. We get to throw out names, see what sticks to the board.
It's fun.
It's fantastic.
One
more thing, Nate. I did want to mention something. There is the big caveat, at least that I know of, that I don't know how much I'm out to share of this, is Michael Kelly going to get the final say on who this new head coach is going to be? And the reason why I bring that up is because we now have university-wide alignment with athletics, which we have been clamoring for 10 years to get a president who gives a shit and a board of trustees that gives a shit. And they finally do, and they're building all of the amenities that you could ever ask for out of a program. And for a head coach or a potential new head coach, that's dollar signs to kind of be that staple and forerun guy. But Michael Kelly's not necessarily on the hot seat, but you kind of whiffed on Jeff Scott. You're you're at this point kind of a laughing stock. So at what point is the board of trustees or anyone above Michael Kelly's position going to be the one that's going to make a call and say, hey, I understand you want X, but we're looking at Y here. It's something to look at and pay attention, as this goes on, is that this isn't just going to be a Michael Kelly decision. This is going to be a board of trustees, Ray of Law. Like, we're going to have to get the blessing from the top down to the bottom, and this person's got to be it. And they have the money to do it. They have the wherewithal, and they're willing to spend the dollars on it. It's just, man, you had to get it with Jeff Scott. You did it. Now it's compounded X higher. You have to get it here. You have to get the guy.
I mean, I think you got to, right? You got to be willing to pay. That's going to be, if you want, especially if one of your things, one of your non-negotiables is a guy with head coaching experience, you got to pay. Like you've got to pay for this. It's worth it. I think it's worth to overpay to get a good guy that can take you get you some positive momentum going for the on-campus stadium. It's worth an overpay, I think, at this point.
You can make that money back. I promise you, if you are listening, USF Board of Trustees, you will make that money back if it's the guy. Like, people are going to be clamoring to throw money at this program.
Like, if you went out and got Jamie Chadwell somehow, which again I don't think is likely, but if you somehow just threw a bunch of money, you got Jamie Chadwell, and he starts doing the same stuff here that he did at Coastal, you're moving into this stadium with a really exciting brand of football. And now, like, you're not having to worry about season ticket allotment and, selling season tickets. I like that kind of thing. You'd move into that stadium with I think your season ticket allotment sold out, right? Like there'd be excitement back in, positivity. And with what the conference is doing, you'd probably be in a really commanding position in the conference as well. I mean, when's the first expanded playoff will be before you move into the stadium. Imagine if you make the playoffs a year or two in a row. If let's say you nail this hire. So I think you got to overpay if you want to get some. Don't be afraid to overpay. Get a guy that's done it. Get somebody that can get the fan base excited, can recruit to this level. They'll have time. I think if anything, the Jeff Scott era shows that you'll have time, right? Like, I think some people are looking at it like he got fired before he finished 3 full seasons, but like, look at the record. It was almost like he only got. If they would have won at Temple, he's not fired. I really don't think, right?
No, absolutely.
It was just optically you kind of had to do it. So
right,
you'll get time here, I think. But they got to go out and get somebody and be willing to pay for it. They can't. You can't go cheap, right?
No, absolutely not. No. I see that. What's the timeline for the hire? Players are going to be looking to transfer or stay depending on the hire. That's right. It's I would expect the first 15 days of December. I would assume that it'd be locked up because of what the transfer portal opens December 15th, right, or something like December 15th, like to the 30th or something.
Yes, but after the head coach gets fired, there's a 30-day window where players can enter. So,
holy vey.
So like, I mean, now.
Yeah, a player can go in now, but yeah, I'm trying to see when the window opens for everybody in terms of
the 15th, I think, if I'm recalling correctly. It is so hard for me to pay attention to the transfer portal cycle at this point that I'm yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why they did it to just make it a little bit more seamless, but now with all the rules and caveats, it's a little tough to kind of keep my head straight on it.
All right, so the first window lasting from December 1st through December 15th.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I would assume they move pretty quickly, and because the final game of the season is the 26th, right? 25th, 26th.
Saturday, not Black Friday this year.
Yeah, so you got a 4-day buffer window before the window opens that you could hire someone. I think getting the head start now kind of helps you in that regard. But it could also be like a Manny Diaz situation where Temple hires Manny Diaz, and then the Miami job's available. I'll skip out on Temple and head down to Miami. So it's a tough thing if a bigger school comes calling, regardless of who it possibly could be. There's one person on this hot board set that was not mentioned. It is the current offensive coordinator, Travis Trickett. His offense has been pretty good. I mean, it's kind of similar to, I guess, Kerwin Bell's status. That final year, by all accounts, he was not the issue. And his offense has still been able to put up some points with a backup quarterback, with the various injuries to the offensive line. It seemed like him and Gary kind of started to click. The offense started to click before his injury. Does he have a shot at this job?
I don't know. I wouldn't think, but I don't know. He's done very well. He's done exactly what he was brought in to do. So I think you'd have to give him, if he wants to interview for the job, I think you'd have to give him an interview. But, I think you probably want to just totally cut ties with the staff and move on. Kind of just don't let anything linger. But I think he might be a guy that somebody would keep on possibly because he's done a good job and he's also seen as one of your better recruiters. So maybe he's a guy they keep on, but I wouldn't think that's not like – you want to talk about getting the fan base excited, not people that watch the film rooms and stuff, just the general fan base. Hey guys, we hired the offensive coordinator off the team that hasn't, that won one game last year. What do you guys think? Is everybody really excited about it?
Oh yeah, all of them would be so excited, Seth. There's no one that's going to be upset about that.
Yeah, so I don't think optically. I think you need to just kind of move away.
That's fair.
And don't forget last time. The recruiting part's huge on that end, but don't forget last time around, Michael Kelly didn't use a search firm. He did it, Michael Kelly and Associates. So going back on what Steeg was saying, that might be a change that happens. Is a search firm gets brought in, and I'm not entirely sure what any of the rules and regulations are with in-season hiring or in-season searching, but maybe a search firm can do some of that stuff in the background.
Right.
I would be shocked if they weren't doing some stuff in the background already.
I was about to leeway right into that. We kind of mentioned, I think maybe the 4 or 5 of us mentioned it at some point, that it's like, I don't think they would make a move unless they know who they wanted next. Like it was like a kind of like, we're not going to make this move unless we know what's going to, we have a guy lined up already or a name lined up already. It's not like the Scott Frost, Nebraska situation where they just needed to cut ties because, things were bad. But they seem like Yeah, Seth, you need to add a fourth slide of coaches who are unemployed.
Zach Cocho.
The Cocho. But yeah, I'd imagine if I had to sit into the shoes of Michael Kelly, they probably already have at least 3 names that they're really going to love and go after. So we'll see. And I'm going to answer a question here for Dimitri. They didn't necessarily give up on Timmy McClain. They took when a quarterback that won the Big 12 who transfers out says, "Hey, I want to join your team." You got to kind of say yes to that, and then say, "Hey, younger guy, we're going to bring this guy on in. He can teach you for a couple of years because you're still raw and you still have a lot of things that you can work on." And then that guy kind of just decides, "Hey, I'm going to leave and go to your rival program." I don't know who gave up on who in that situation.
Where he may not even be playing quarterback.
There's also that distinct possibility.
Can we also make a hot board of names that we just need to just throw into the absolute garbage can and never bring up? Because there's one name.
Yeah.
Jim hasn't coached in fucking 2 years now.
Can I give a perspective as somebody who was not paying attention really a ton
Please.
When he was head coach?
Yes.
What championship did they win when he was the head coach?
None. International. They are the final International Bowl champions, so they're technically international champions.
They won we were number 2 for a week champion. He won the punching a player championship.
No. So I don't think he's a bad coach, but it's not like he wanted. I think he was the first coach, and he obviously brought the program up, but they didn't win anything. And he's not been a head coach since, has he?
No.
So if he was a really hot commodity, I'm sure he would have been hired after USF, after what he did in lifting up the program.
There's a reason.
And he wasn't. So why not? He's been hired. He's done really well as a coordinator. I think he's a good coach, but it's not happening. And to me, I someone kind of more on the outside of that era, I understand the admiration for him and kind of getting the program, but it's not like he won 10 conference championships or something.
No.
So
I think that the most games they won under Jim Leavitt was 9. Charlie Strong won 11, and he got fired. So, or 110, I can't remember which way it was. I know there was a missed game in there, but he won a bunch early on. We'd be limping into November with half the roster. Oh wait, no, it's already happened. So it doesn't. It's basically the same thing.
I think there's probably I think the thing probably that people look back and there's elements I think of his teams that people want back, like the toughness, right? He had tough teams, right? He had some tough teams. He recruited the area well, found those kind of hidden gem players and developed them. I think those are the things you want in the next coach, right? You want somebody to bring in toughness. You want somebody that can find and identify and develop players, especially from this area. But you can get those from somebody else that's been a head coach recently that understands the NIL landscape. The recruiting's totally different now. So if you haven't been a head coach recently, it's going to be a little different for you coming back into it. So I get it. I get it from that aspect. There's a lot of things he did well in aspects of his team you want to bring back, but you can get it from somebody else.
Also, recruiting's way different than 20 years ago. Those diamonds in the rough are much harder to find because there's huddle and there's film and guys are willing to leave the state to go to other programs. So that's harder to the whole, get 2 stars and turn them into 5 stars is harder to do.
And it's honestly, it seems as a whole, at least in the state of Florida, those 2-star guys are probably a little bit lower tier than they were 15, 20 years ago. I think the top tier guys are still going to be really good, but those lower tier recruits are not as great or special as they may have been in the past, or more developed. I think, as you said, with the explosion of Huddle and all this tape, I think we're getting a more accurate reading with the recruiting ranks than we probably did in the past. So it's kind of that'll really hamper some things as well for you.
Yeah, very few guys slip through the cracks now.
Very, very few. Unless you're just super tiny and small and minuscule, you'll get recruited.
And if you're super tall, small and tiny and minuscule, you'll go play Houston.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
That's got to be. I mean, in all seriousness, right? I mean, there's a pretty good chance, like probably like 98% chance he doesn't even get interviewed. But if I'm Kerwin Bell, my two things that I put a stamp on, like, what's your resume? It's I wanted Tank Dell, and I got you your only consensus All-American since George Selvey.
Yeah.
That's it. That is my resume.
I had Tank Dell committed, basically.
But y'all thought he was too small. And the guy that thought he was too small, one of the guys who thought he was too small, is still on your staff.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Can we also say, I want to say this, but I'm also hesitant not to say, fuck it, I'll say it. Jeff Scott did a really good job, and I know people are going to take this the wrong way because they always do, of rebuilding the culture within the locker room. To put it frankly, 2019, that bad situation in that locker room, and did a really good job of cleaning house and cleaning up stuff there. And frankly, I think the next coach that needs to come in needs to do a nice clean house outside of the locker room in the nicest way possible.
Just new ideas, maybe.
Right? Yeah, just something fresh. I mean, because the thing is, it's not necessarily like that things are dire within the USF athletics building that's inside the Leroy Selman. They're putting a lot of really good things out there. The master plan that they put together, great website, looks beautiful. All the plans that they're putting together is absolutely phenomenal, and I love everything. But there's some leaks, and there's some really ugly floorboards that I think a new football coach can have a really good influence on to fix. That's my next. That's what I look at the stupid things. Like if he wins football games, great. I want him to do like 3 things, and I can't say those 3 things, but you 3 know what 3 things I'm referring to.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've thrown enough people under the bus. Let's
if we make a Patreon, then maybe we'll get the Air Bud film, and then I'll say what those 3 things that need to happen.
Right.
We might have to do the first ever football OnlyFans.
I mean,
here we go.
The Air Bud tape was because of YouTube. YouTube just decided we weren't allowed to show it.
Yeah.
Show it here.
That's ridiculous.
Film
criticism isn't allowed anymore, I guess. All right.
Feet pics and USF film breakdowns all at our
all in
OnlyFans.
one place.
Check it out.
And some questionable human on dog contact in Air Bud. golden retriever.
Oh my goodness.
You get it all here at the Daily Stampede, folks. I felt like we kind of, I steered it in the direction I wanted to, but we kind of did gloss over, Jeff Scott he was the right hire in 2019. Like, I feel like that's probably the fair assessment. Like, he was like one of the pipe dream guys. Like, oh, there's no way USF's going to get him or Tony Elliott. And then they got him, and good Lord, it crashed and burned spectacularly. And wrote it in the Post this evening about him being fired. He got hired in December of 2019, and then the pandemic hit, and then he just could never recover like some of the other coaches in that coaching cycle did, namely, Dave Aranda for other reasons. But good Lord,
I think he came in a little naive, like the whole, I'm not going to watch any film from last year type stuff. Like, you might want to know. And do I believe he didn't watch anything? No, but maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe he truly didn't.
Yeah, like and that kind of stuff is like you know, it seems like he was coming in trying to be really nice, and you know, it just I think it kind of proves to me like this is not a job for if your skill is recruiting for a powerhouse, if that's like your number one skill, is what you're known for, is he's a great recruiter. Like, is this the job for you right now? I don't know about that. Like, I think it's got to be somebody that's coming in with a unique schematic kind of look.
And I mean, if you look at Jeff Scott, before him, Chad Morris, Tony Elliott, Brett Venables, there's I think Nick Simon brought this up first. Is there a referendum on Dabo coaching tree here as well? Is there something there? Obviously, it's really early for the latter two, but
just look at their own offenses, like their own offense now that now that all the studs are gone, right? It's not like Clemson's lighting the world on fire either, and they do recruit really well. It's just that like the scheme is sound, but it's the scheme that they're running at Clemson that USF ran a little bit here because there was some Charlie Weiss Jr. stuff, but it's like not like crazy advanced, but it helps when you have those great players that can win one-on-one matchups, and you're not like scheming people wide open.
Mm-hmm.
You're just winning. Like if you go back and watch the national championship they won against Alabama, they went for like 11-13 or something nuts on third down and blew out Alabama. It was kind of an aberration, but how many like just 15-yard out routes where Lawrence throwing on a rope and a receiver was catching with the dude draped all over him? And it was like, first down. What a call. It's like, no, not really. Like, no. You've got like first round quarterback throwing a first round receiver, and he makes a catch with the dude draped all over him. So,
but since Jeff Scott left, there's where are all the receivers at Clemson now? It's just very strange. It's almost like that entire
recruiter.
That entire mold worked so well those few years there, and now everyone's out, and it's weird. It's a very strange.
Yeah, I think he's a great recruiter, a great receivers coach. Like, just didn't work as a head coach, and he's not like a crazy scheme guy to me. Just watching the teams, but he's a good guy. He's a really good recruiter. I think he's going to be a hot commodity. Actually, I think there's going to be a lot of schools that want to bring him in if he wants to coach again, because he fits. Like Steeg said, he kind of checked all the boxes coming in, and like Nate said, he checked all the boxes coming in. It's just that maybe there was a misunderstanding of what's needed at this job, right? You don't need a guy to come in and fight Florida and Florida State and Miami for recruits. It ain't happening. Not right now, right? You need somebody to come in and lay a foundation, and then once they do that, then you can start fighting those guys for recruits. But like you got to take your lumps early, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of saying in the chat, Scott kind of relied on the older guys early on, probably to his detriment, and you kind of bring up Mike Houston. You're kind of right. He just let the guys take their lumps, and now they figured it out. ECU is heavily in contention of what they're 6-3 right now. Their offense seems to be kind of clicking. They've got two really talented wide receivers. Holt Naylor still has his flaws. They've got a pretty decent running game. That's kind of what you're looking for. That's kind of the rebuild, because ECU was down bad.
Didn't Mike Houston win a national championship or something in FCS?
With James Madison, yeah.
Mike Houston was had been a really good head coach before he got there.
And that was a weird situation because he was going to take the Charlotte job, allegedly. And then once ECU opened, before the paperwork was dry, he went that way. What's interesting about that is Holt Naylor's also has like 2 master's degrees and 2 doctorates. Is that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think really as crazy as this all is, like, how if he just has a great quarterback when he comes in, how much is different? Like it really can be somewhat that simple too. But I think that was one of his biggest flaws, is he never figured out quarterback until kind of this year. And then it was too late, and then your quarterback got hurt. And the other obviously never figured out the defensive side of the ball. But I wonder if that's a thing where, like, as an offensive guy, being an offensive guy your whole life, you know what you're looking for. When I watch a receiver's film, I can really quick, that's a dude, that guy can play. when I watch a linebackers film, I can kind of but I'm not like when I was working with Jerry Odom, I'd throw in a film, I'd be like, hey, this guy's pretty productive. What do you think? Recruiting him, a high school kid, really productive, bunch of tackles. He watched 2 plays. He goes, no, he's not explosive enough, and that's all he needed to see. And I was like, oh, okay. It didn't take much, but so maybe they didn't recruit well on the defense side of the ball. Maybe they weren't looking for the right things, or they couldn't quite identify the talent on that side of the ball as well as they could on the offensive side of the ball, because they recruited pretty well on offense.
Yeah, they have. I mean, they've got really talented wide receivers. The transfer portal's kind of let him down in the wide receiver room, but Xavier Weaver's kind of turned into a guy. Jimmy Horn was the belle of the ball, right? And Brian Batti's been really good. Kelly Joyner's been pretty good. Even Jeremy Mangum when he was healthy last year. Oh man,
there's one hire that would cause me to just like hang it up. And I can't mention that name yet, but Scott Frost is not that guy. I'd be like, yeah, cool. Fuck it. Get crazy. Do it.
I mean, he went 0-12 to 6-7, and then won a national championship or whatever, or came close or whatever it was.
Too.
So
Chenander, he's not bad, I don't think.
Yeah. Speaking of Oregon, how about Kenny Dillingham? How would you feel about him?
He's another interesting name. I didn't put him on there because he's he has Arizona. I know he's got Arizona ties, and some people think he might be up for the Arizona State job. But I mean, he's done pretty well, I think. But he's not another.
He can get a better job.
He doesn't have a ton of I mean, they'll probably so there. I mean, there's rumor going around now. If you guys want to get into rumors, that Auburn is looking at Dan Lanning.
Oh, you fucking kidding me?
What?
That's a Twitter rumor. So I mean, that's not like. And I've heard people mention his name when the job first opened. It's like, hey, what about this? Well, that's a Twitter rumor. Dan Lanning. So like he could either be the OC at Auburn or maybe the head coach at Oregon.
I will also shamelessly plug a friend of the blog. Will Turner just released his hot board. Until the Daily Stampede releases their hot board, Will Turner has the best hot board.
We've already released ours. It was on the stream, Steeg.
Well,
or at least mine, rather.
Yeah, the Seth Varnadore is the best hot board of the Seth Varnadore section.
Thank you.
Man, we talk about OnlyFans and we sign us up. New site with hot girls? Yes, please.
Well, how about we were looking for hot boards, okay, not hot broads.
Jeez Louise, we got enough of them. Am I right? Am I right, ladies? As we kind of approach the hour mark, there's really,
any names on there, Steeg, that stick out to you on Will's? Or do you not want to say them?
There's one that I do want to say. App State's offensive coordinator, Kevin Barbe, I think would be kind of interesting. It would be a weird power-ish move to kind of reestablish a little bit, especially how App State has been very consistent over the last couple of years. That was kind of a name that jumped out at me, and I was like, that like the Sun Belt and American Athletic Conference is kind of in a flux of who's the big dog in the street. But he's an interesting name, but I won't spill any of the other ones.
Was it Central Michigan with McElwain before?
It's been in Florida, I think.
Director of Player Development at Florida for McElwain.
Yeah.
Real
like
quick,
if we're hiring Sunbelt coordinators, I'd rather just have Willie Korn.
Right. Yeah. There's but it's got that Clemson stink on it still. There's a lot of really interesting
enough, I think, on his own. I think.
Right.
Hey, real quick, just because I know you talked about this before, and this is not on Seth's board. If you were able to get a Willie Simmons, so a established head coach at the FCS program, or a offensive coordinator from a FBS job, who would you prefer? Let's say either like Willie. Let's say it's Willie Simmons or it's Alex Atkins. Which do you have a preference? Would you prefer one or the other?
Atkins. I think I would one Atkins. But I mean, that's a pretty close one. I'll be perfectly honest. What, like we mentioned at the top of this discussion, what Alex has been able to do at Florida State with Jordan Travis and that offense. I mean, they're humming. They're freaking good. That offense is fun to watch. Jordan Travis is a legit dude. And I mean, they easily put up 45 yesterday against Miami. I mean, Miami's horrendous, but that was
underdog to Georgia Tech.
I mean, they're
bad.
pretty bad. They're real bad. But that's a fun offense. But Willie Simmons, as we mentioned, man, the crap that he's had to go through at his 2 previous stops, I mean, it'd be a cakewalk for him because of all the minutia of the behind the scenes stuff would already be taken care of for him, and having the staff, the off-field staff, kind of pulling in the right direction, the leadership all pulling in the right direction, it would seem like a pretty good hire, pretty good spot.
Simmons made the playoffs for the first time at FAMU for the first time since 2001. Has won 9 games a couple times since he's been there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about him. I was just kind of looking through his bio.
Yeah. And then Kevin, remember when Nathan said Bob Shoot gave him slight Tom Allen vibes? He did. He's kind of insane, except Tom Allen was on the field as a defensive coordinator, and Bob Shoot was in the press box. And yeah, your defense coordinator should never be in the press box. That's the one rule. And also, I mean, Bob Shoop had some other stuff going on that was less desirable than Tom Allen. That's for sure. That just never figured it out. He was a decent defensive coordinator at his previous stops. Terrible here. I mean, Temple scored on every single possession yesterday. That was
yeah, he'd been good. Like he also I think he did a pretty good job picking and choosing before this year of jobs where he could go in with a ton of talent and win. Besides Vanderbilt, where I think he kind of that helped him a lot in his. He won at Vanderbilt, but like Mississippi State had 3 first-round picks on defense the year he came in. So man, Mississippi State, wow, they're really good. Yeah, they had 2 NFL defensive linemen and NFL safety. That's helpful. First-round picks. So
that is helpful.
Yeah. So I mean, his track record was good coming in, but not as good going out.
No. Not as good going out at all. And as we wrap this up, we'll have another show on Tuesday. We'll do the film room on Wednesday. It's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be an interesting week just across the USF world as we know it, as they prep for SMU in 6 days. God bless them. I will give the team never quit. I mean, the defense kind of quit yesterday, but outside of the defense's pretty poor showing yesterday, they hung around, and the locker room seemingly never splintered. So that was good to see. But just a quick recap: Jeff Scott fired, Bob Shoop fired. Michael Kelly is going to be looking for his second head coach in 3 years. You can't mess this one up, or Michael Kelly will not have a job anymore here at USF. You don't get to whiff on 2 head coaching hires in football, and then potentially worst case scenario, you've got to hire a men's basketball coach and maybe 1 or 2 Olympic sports. Most athletic directors don't survive that. But
do VP of athletics do?
No, also no.
Oh, okay.
So he's got to nail this hire. He's got to take his time. He's got to figure it out and make sure the ducks in a row. But the next coach should inherit a better locker room, depending on who stays, who goes. And there's a lot of talented guys at the top that can move up a level. I think if Xavier Weaver decides to leave, I think he could go up a level. Jimmy Horn obviously could go up a level. Brian Petit could go up a level. I think he proved that this season. There are a lot of guys that USF may be without next year due to the coaching change. But once again, what must be done eventually must be done immediately, and that was the case today. For Seth, Fido, Steeg, I'm Nathan Bond. Thanks for tuning in and joining us for this emergency edition of the Bulluminati podcast. Jeff Scott got fired. As always, go Bulls.
Go Bulls. Jeff Scott's a nice guy.
Go Bulls. I love everyone.